Hopefully it's recording now. So welcome everybody to episode 4 of the ED&I Lunchtime Bite-Sized Training Events organized by the BSW Training Hub. We're very glad to have Dion Corsa with us. She is the Deputy Director for Leadership, Talent and Experience and Inclusion at the NHS England Southwest. And if you have any questions or any thoughts or comments while Daryl's giving her talk, you're more than welcome to use the chat box, and we can try to address them. You will have time at the end to ask questions and to make comments as well. So feel free to take some notes. But again, these slides down is very kindly offered to share with us at the end of the session as well. So over to you, Dion.
Okay, thank you. So, hi everyone, I'm Dion Corsa. My pronouns are she and her. And as Isaac said, I'm Deputy Director of Leadership, Talent, Experience and Inclusion. I'll talk a bit more about the portfolio. It's wider than just those four things. This is my team, so I'm sure some of you have come across some of them, notably probably Zoe Spittle, who's our Staff Experience Manager and heads up our EDI Leads group, and then Kate McKay, who leads on the People Promise programme. So the portfolio. So our portfolio, so I have two sub-teams. Half of the people in my team deal with leadership and talent, and the other half of the team deal with staff experience and equality, diversity and inclusion, and that includes retention as well. This is just some of the kind of headline areas that are in our portfolio. So if any of these sit in your remit or you're interested in anything related, please do get in touch. Happy to have follow-up conversations about any of it. So today I'm going to talk to you a bit more about our EDI work and our staff experience portfolio. So the EDI work for the region is described as our Leading for Inclusion strategy. So that describes how we understand and improve our experiences of the diverse workforce that we've got. And it also focuses on how we can develop our leaders and our people to be more compassionate, to be more inclusive, and to think about those elements in everything that they do. And then ultimately that should lead to transformational change. So in the strategy, we aim to create a culture where people feel valued, they feel heard, they feel able to bring their best selves to work. But also, a big part of the work that we're doing there is about developing people, starting with the top of the organisation, but working our way through, right the way through to the bottom of the organisation. That's the aim. And as you can imagine, to do that, it's a long-term programme. We also want to recruit, develop and retain a more diverse workforce that is representative of our population, and work to improve staff experience across all the protected characteristics to ensure that the Southwest is the best place to work. What we're doing currently in this space is we're engaging our ICB chief execs. They've all signed up to the Leading for Inclusion strategy, and they're now engaging their board members and their provider chief execs to bring them on board with the vision, for them to understand the work that we're doing, and to ultimately for this to be a Southwest approach, not only an NHS England approach. So there are a number of work streams that sit under that banner of the Leading for Inclusion strategy. It's everything from the commons narrative that explains what it is that we're trying to do, right through to our organisational design strategy for the region, but also thinking about practical things like how we rewrite our policies to be more inclusive, to be more to take account of diversity as well. So I won't go into all of the work streams. There's about 14 work streams that sit underneath that. The first thing that we're doing alongside that engagement and sign-up piece with our leaders is we are asking for funding from each organisation in the Southwest. So we're asking for contribution from my organisation right the way through to all of the providers to do three things: to run a leadership development offer, starting with the chief execs and starting with the chief people officer teams, but also taking one cohort per system to be part of that development program as well, to almost cascade the learning and the training for a train the trainer approach to ensure that we're reaching all elements of our staff across the region. And then the third area the funding is going to be used for is a development program for our EDI leads to support their transferable skills, their future aspirations, etc. And ultimately, we hope that everything EDI will link somehow to our Leading for Inclusion strategy. And part of one of the work streams that's within the plan is actually about how we're interconnecting everything EDI across the region. So happy to pick that up with any of you that might be interested as well. And Isaac, that might be a good thing for us to talk about in the future as well. And what we've started to do, linked to the making sure everything's aligned across the region, we know that in the nursing space, there's a lot of work going on in relation to EDI. So we've started with that area to ensure that alignment. So we've got the Global Majority Action Plan work, which nationally they refer to it as the Ethnic Minority Action Plan work. And this action plan was developed during COVID, actually, in a response to the pandemic, and particularly about the impact it was having on global majority groups. And our national nursing teams came up with this strategy to focus on 5 key areas. So protecting staff in those groups, representation in decision making of staff in those groups, rehabilitation and recovery, and engagement with staff and communications, etc. And what we've done is to almost build a plan around how we achieve those those 5 key things. The career progression sponsorship work is an alumni that has been brought together, that was set up linked to that Global Majority Action Plan work to maintain the momentum of those programs that we started linked to that. So it's things like getting to equity, the nursing and midwifery sponsorship program, the Developing Aspirant Leaders program, which all fell out of that action plan initially. And we held a regional event in May this year, which brought together key members of that program that work in the Southwest to come up with a challenge that we could work on as a team to make sure that we saw action and saw progress and we moved the needle in this space. The challenge we came up with was improving representation at 8B and above across our region. So that's something that we'll be progressing at pace using what is a 90-day methodology to make sure we address all of that. And then within my little onion diagram is underpinning and at the heart of all that the work that we're doing in relation to EDI. We're using data to benchmark, to demonstrate improvement, and through evaluation using feedback to make sure that we continuously improve everything that we're doing. And we work with our EDI leads across the region to focus in on that data, benchmark that data, and then use it to ultimately demonstrate improvements going forward and demonstrate that we're adhering and showing progress in relation to the EDI improvement plan high impact actions. So I won't go into detail around the specific data sets, but happy to take it offline and talk to anyone about it who wants to know more. So this is the reporting for our EDI program. So if I start from the bottom, on the left, we've got our EDI leads group. That's we bring together EDI leads across the region to collaborate and share best practice. And this is where we focus on the kind of data crunching and comparing kind of where parts of our region are doing better than others, what it is that they're doing differently, to share that learning to so that there is that improvement. On the right, we've got the Global Maturity Action Plan group, which is where we monitor the delivery against the action plan, basically. And then those two groups feed into our EDI delivery group, which is our chief execs across the systems and our CPOs across the system and myself. We come together to talk about everything in that Leading for Inclusion plan that I talked about earlier, but also talking about the delivery against each of the work streams and holding the leads to account. So each ICB chief exec is responsible for each of those items that are part of the Leading for Inclusion plan and the Leading for Inclusion work streams. And they have to talk about on a bi-monthly basis how they're delivering against that action, basically. Above that, we've got the Regional People Board, which brings together our integrated care systems, our health and care organisations, and other key stakeholders at regional level. And it's not so much an assurance group, but it's about mutual accountability and making sure each part of the system across the Southwest are bought into any of the work that we're doing in relation to anything people and culture. So that's why our work stream reports in there. We also have a dotted line into our chief exec group as well, because our chief exec sits on that EDI delivery group. We then have a dotted line because it's a key priority for the region and for NHS England. We report into that group and we report into the exec group as well. So that takes me nicely onto our staff experience work. So in our staff experience portfolio, our aim is to ultimately improve staff experience and therefore increase our staff retention across the region, excuse me. So we're doing this through our work streams that we show here. So 5 work streams. The first is around supported systems around well-being conversation, compassionate leadership, career conversations, and almost supporting them with mentoring approaches and how they can ultimately improve their staff well-being, and that will lead to retaining staff, basically. The second box is about supporting our regional collaborative work. And that's where we bring our leaders and our managers together to support them to create a compassionate and inclusive culture. And ultimately, that will improve staff experience and ultimately lead to us retaining staff as well. The third area is our People Promise Exemplar program. So that's what PPE stands for. It's a program to get providers to focus on improving staff experience and staff leaver rates by focusing on the people promise areas. And it's very much focused on implementing evidence-based retention improvement interventions that align to the people promise. If people want to understand a bit more about the people promise areas, happy to take that offline to have a conversation about that. So we apply a people's promise lens to improving long-term staff experience, basically. But apologies if I sound nasally, it's because I've got a bit of a cold and I've got a bit of a tissue here and a bit of a runny nose, so excuse me. The fourth area is about understanding and supporting the improvement of our staff experience in the Southwest. So we use our staff survey results, our national quarterly survey results and insights from that, and student experience results to provide regional oversight assurance and insights into how our people are feeling, whether they're engaged, whether morale is low. And then we focus in on areas where some are doing well, but others might not be doing so well, and match up those different needs from across the system to say you could take learning from this person, or this organization and do a bit better, and this is how you could approach it. And then lastly, the 5 retention high impact actions. It's about the Southwest continuing to make improvements about embedding those high impact actions. They're around the self-assessment tool, menopause, legacy mentoring, preceptorships, and flexible retirement. And each system, and organization support improvements across those 5 areas. And we do the same thing, the kind of facilitating, the matching up to make sure others are learning from each other. And then that takes me on to my last slide. Oh, for some reason, I didn't haven't included it, but I'll stop sharing there and I'll just talk to the last slide, which is about the reason why it's really good that our all the 4 areas that I talked about sits underneath me is because there's clear dependencies and clear links to um, to staff experience, and that when that gets better, actually that you retain your staff. When you focus on how you manage talent in your organization and giving people opportunities, that leads to better staff experience and then ultimately retaining staff. So it's really important that those areas are very much closely linked. And I would encourage those of you who lead work programs or part of any programs in those areas to make those links, and happy to talk to anyone offline, or to take any questions now about any of the information that I've shared with you. And I think that takes me, Isaac, right on time actually to 20 minutes.
Thank you so much, Dion. I'm so sorry I mispronounced your name in the beginning.
Oh, it's
Um,
okay.
I think Diane asks if we are able to have a copy of the strategy, and see if we can implement that, some aspects of the strategy in our workspaces.
Yes, so what I can do is when I share the slides, I will share the Leading for Inclusion strategy. So you've all got that kind of that high level document that talks about what we're trying to do and the plan going forward. So yes, happy to do that.
Um, Thanks. I had a question. I was just a bit interested in knowing what the 90-day strategy or 90-day plan was. Like
Yes,
what? Yeah.
so 90 days is they're actually an organization that basically the national team have employed them to use their 90-day methodology to move the dial for the change that we want to see. And you come up with a challenge statement, which I talked about improving representation at 8B and above,
Yeah.
for global majority groups.
Yeah.
And at the end of that 90 days, we should have done what it is that we said in that challenge statement,
Okay.
basically. So what we're doing in the next 90 days is coming up with, well, we've come up with the plan of how we're going to do it already. But by the end of those 90 days, we should have people in post at that 8B or above,
Yeah.
that before this program they won't have been in that process, and they won't have been in those roles. And there's lots of process that kind of links with that, which I won't go into, but that's effectively what it is.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It really interesting to know what are those exact. I know it's probably not in the scope of today's session, but what are those exact action plans, or what are those exact actions they're taking to actually meet those targets within 90 days? Um, yeah.
So
Does
there's
it? Yeah, go
I
ahead.
can talk about it offline if you
Yeah,
prefer,
yeah,
but
yeah.
there's three specific projects. One to do with recruitment practices, so us identifying roles across the region within nursing, because this project sits within the nursing portfolio, within nursing and midwifery, that we can actually use to springboard people in that are I think we said two bands below, because sometimes we've got internationally educated nurses that have had to take a pay cut or demotion when they've come to this country, and it's about putting those people into those posts quite
Mm,
quickly. And then there's a project around talent management. So how do we kind of identify those people that are
mm,
at that level or have those qualifications that can go into the role. And then the third bit is about the support around them to enable them to do that. So everything from a CV and personal statement writing to coaching, mentoring when they're in the roles to support them to do a good job.
okay. Does anybody have any other questions? We have a couple more minutes to discuss this topic, or any other comments that people had. You're more than welcome to unmute yourselves and or type in the comment box. Looks like there's no more questions, and no more.
No? Okay. So thank you so much for inviting me today. It was lovely talking to you all. And like I said, happy for you to share my details for anyone to get in touch. And I will share the slides and the strategy. I'll do it now, Isaac, so you've got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you. We're going to let you go a few minutes earlier than planned, but then thank you so much for joining us today. Episode 4. Episode 5 will come out. Will be happening in probably the first or second week of November. We're trying to confirm the date. And that will be the end of season 1, and then we'll have season 2 in spring next year. But yeah, thank you all for joining us. And if you want to access this video, it will be available on the BSW Training Hub website, which you should be able to find very quickly on Google. But thank you all for joining us, and thanks a lot, Dion.
Thank you. Bye bye.